Good evening and welcome to the Newark Public Library. This program is being streamed live via the Newark Public Library's Facebook page and will be available for review on our YouTube page next week. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome Ayana Morris and Kimberlee S. Williams for Film and Business, an intimate discussion about creative entrepreneurship and filmmaking. Ayana will share her experiences as a filmmaker and entrepreneur and share advice for new and aspiring creative entrepreneurs. My name is Ann Schatz. I'm a librarian specializing in business reference at the Newark Public Library in Newark, New Jersey. On behalf of our director, Jocelyn Bowling-Dixon, and the Board of Trustees, President, Dr. Lauren Wells, we thank you all for joining us this evening. This discussion is the first in the series Creative Gains, Becoming a Creative Entrepreneur, sponsored by the PNC Foundation. In celebration of the Newark Public Library's soon-to-open makerspace for creative entrepreneurs called Made at NPL. First, I'd like to introduce our interviewer this evening, Kimberlee S. Williams. Kimberlee is an award-winning business owner whose accomplishments have been recognized by the World Economic Forum, Rutgers Business School, the Star Ledger, and the NJ Small Business Development Centers. She has appeared on New Jersey television's One-on-One with Steve Abudato, and you can hear her TED Talk, The New Majority, on TED.com. Through Kimberlee's experience launching FemWorks, multicultural digital marketing agency in Newark, New Jersey, she realized that the local business environment was not well organized to help competition instead of collaboration among small businesses. Through determination and social savvy, Kimberlee made her way to tables of power as a change agent representing the voice of the small business community. Determined to elevate Black and Brown entrepreneurs so they are positioned to benefit from and contribute to the city's economic resurgence. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Kimberlee right now, and I hope you enjoy.
Thank you so much, Ann. I'm really honored to be here as a part of the launch of something new in the city of Newark to help build capacity for creative entrepreneurs. This makerspace, very, very excited about it. And I'm glad that we're here with Ayana Morris.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
The co-owner of Newark Moonlight Cinema. And I'm going to read her bio because it is very impressive and you're going to learn a lot more about her once we begin to talk. So Ayana Morris is a filmmaker and exhibitor. She recently completed her first feature-length documentary, Why Is We Americans, co-directed by Yudi Aloni and executive produced by Lauren Hill. The film is an exploration of poet Amiri Baraka, his wife Amina, and their son Ras. A portrait of a city emerges with an inspiring call to arms in the fight for class and racial justice. The film has taken both coasts by storm with reviews in both the New York Times and the LA Times. Go ahead. With over 15 years of experience as a film director, producer, Ayana's work has been featured in Rolling Stone magazine. She produced digital content for the CCDC activation at the 2019 Cannes Lions Festival in France, opened Leopard Stripe Productions and boutique production company, independently produced 2 seasons of a digital talk show called TTYL. I remember that. And worked for major networks such as VH1 and CW. Morris made her mark in Black history by opening the first Black-owned drive-in movie theater, Newark Moonlight Cinema, with her husband, Sari Morris. The couple's tenacity and commitment to their community is one of the most feel-good viral stories to emerge out of the pandemic, and I can attest to that. Ayana Morris is a visionary who combines art, culture, and business to tell compelling stories that push the narrative of her culture and community. Please join me in welcoming Ayana Morris to Creative Gains Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, when I read all of this, I'm like, were you just born awesome or did you evolve into this awesome person? Tell me more about who you are and how you got started. Are you from Newark?
Yeah, so I'm a fourth generation Norker. Lived here my entire life. I don't know if I was born awesome, but I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and that I wanted to be an artist. And I wasn't always sure about how to combine the two. Um, I remember when I was in high school, me and my friends, we were like kind of like a popular clique in the city. And I came to them like, hey, we got this name for ourselves. We should start throwing parties because like street teams was like the big thing back then. It didn't work out, but that was always like me as a young person, like kind of seeing a void of the market or kind of seeing an opportunity and then wanting to jump at it. And then as I got older, I finally built up the courage and then also the will and the tenacity to actually get it done. Because I mean, I know, starting a business is very difficult. So
It is very difficult. And I imagine that there had to be someone that modeled entrepreneur. Like, why did you even think you could be an entrepreneur in the first place?
well, first, kudos to my mom. My mom was like always like a hustler. She wasn't an entrepreneur, but as a young girl, she did her undergrad. It took her 10 years to get her undergrad degree at Rutgers University. But just seeing her and having that drive and not never giving up, and then she went back to school to become a physical therapist. So she's definitely inspired me and given me a lot of drive. And my dad, who is from Trinidad, came to Brooklyn and started his own ironwork business. And, he did a lot of work in Manhattan. And just seeing them two, just like a combination of the two, kind of is what really inspired me.
I see. So did you ever work for someone else or did you just go into entrepreneurship straight out of high school?
Oh, no, I definitely worked for people, but I was such a bad employee. It's terrible. um, when I was in school, I worked for like Easy Pass. I did customer service. That was fun. And then once I graduated from college, I did start like to get like, freelance production jobs, working as a production assistant, but that they need more money. I'm going to say that. Pay the PAs more money because that is a very thankless, long, underpaid job. So I did that for a few networks. And then I got pregnant not really young. I was like 24, but I was just kind of fresh out of school. And, I decided that I wanted to be a mom, but then being a mom, I also couldn't, give up on my dreams. So then I decided to start my own production company, and I was like substitute teaching at the time. And then I became a full-time teacher where I taught film at Shabazz High School, and that was fun. But then like the call, my passion, my drive was like gnawing at me. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like I'm telling my students to like, be the best version of yourself, pursue all your dreams. And I'm not living up to that. So I took my own advice and then I left teaching. And then that's when I went into my business full time. And, it was a struggle at first, and especially, being alongside my husband, Sari, who has a very successful real estate career, made me question myself, made me really insecure at times. And I'm like, well, what am I doing? Why aren't opportunities happening for me? But, he was great. He always assured me like, no, just keep going. It's going to pay off. Like, and then eventually it started to like, I don't know, it was like a tumbleweed, just started to like take shape, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And I was like, what the, you know?
How did you overcome the doubt in those early years when you had this seed of a vision?
Honestly, therapy. I'm a big proponent and a big advocate for therapy. I know it's not very popular in the Black community and it's very frowned upon. And even when I bring it up at family functions, they're like, oh my God, here goes the therapy spill again.
Hey, look, my wife is a therapist, so
Oh,
you
okay.
can talk therapist all the time.
Yeah. So honestly, therapy really helped me find, who I am and kind of get over like a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of insecurities I had. And my therapist, like, she's so cool. She was like, yes, you can do it. Like, and just pushing me also between her, my husband, and my mom, like they really were encouraging me to like to just keep growing and keep moving and don't let the doubt really set in. So yeah, if you're feeling some type of way about yourself, go to therapy. Like everybody needs therapy.
So you would say then that your therapist is part of your team?
Oh, absolutely. I have multiple therapists too. It's crazy. Yeah. So yeah, my therapist is definitely a part of my team. Like when it was time to like do something, we would brainstorm and I'd be like, hey, I have this idea. Like, what do you think? And, or I ran into this roadblock and it made me feel like this. And, especially being a woman kind of operating in a male dominated space such as film and even entrepreneurship, that's very male. Well, I wouldn't say that's male dominated, but definitely film is male dominated. But she gave me the courage to like, okay, yes, these things are your roadblocks, but like, how do we navigate around that? And just having that soundboard really is what helped me to keep pushing forward.
Wow, that's incredible. I've never heard an entrepreneur say, or I guess admit, that their therapist is a critical part of their team. I think that is awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Claire.
Hey, Claire, how you doing? But I want to go back a little bit. How did you get into film? I mean, did you always know you wanted to do film in entrepreneurship, or was that just your passion?
So it started in like the 5th grade. No, it's like really early. I'm not. I guess it's awesome, but I was like, me and my husband had this conversation really. I was like always a young child that was very self-aware. Like I was always trying to figure out, okay, what was going to be my path, always looking for like jewels or hints like, okay, I like this and figuring out what I like. So in the 5th grade, the mayor, Raz Baraka, was my teacher, and he started like a drama club at the school, at Warren Street School. And then like I thought I wanted to act. So then I went to arts high school and I studied drama and theater. And then it was like in our junior year, we got to take like a television production class. And then like working behind the scenes is when I was like, oh, okay, I really like the controlling the narrative as a part of being a part of the narrative. I think acting takes a certain level of vulnerability that I just can't do. That's not my strength. So yeah, so from there, I'm like, yes, I love this. Like, this is exactly what I want to do. And then I went to William Patterson University and I studied film and television production. And, it's funny, like when you go to school for that type of field, people think, especially if you go to William Patterson, because it's not like a big film school, people think like you're just doing that just to get a degree. Like, oh, that's a fake major. Like, you're not really serious about it. And even some of my own, like one of my close friends kind of told me that as well. But, I knew that that's what I wanted. I just ended up at William Patterson. But for me, it didn't matter because I had the drive and I knew that, this is where I wanted to be. This is the career path that I wanted. So I just continued to press forward and yeah. And then things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you converted, it sounds like at different points in your development, like you said, you were aware that you wanted to go in a certain direction, but you weren't really sure. Mm-hmm. And how did you start making those decisions though, to say, okay, I don't want to be in front of the camera, I want to be behind the camera? Was it your PA experience or what was it?
No, it's definitely that television production class. It's funny how like life works, because when you go to arts high school, like your major is your major. Like if you go to dance, you only take dance class. But I probably shouldn't say this, but at the time, my drama teacher and our principal, they were kind of like beefing a little bit. And so she made the drama students take television production, because at one point they were going to close that program. And then they said, no, they're going to bring it back. And then the teacher didn't have any students. So we just kind of just fell into this class. Like that wasn't the track that I went into our arts high school for. So in taking that class, I was like, oh, like I loved it. We started our own talk show at the school. We used to have to come to school at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to do the production, because our show ran during homeroom, and I was really dedicated. Shout out to Smitty, Richard Smith from Arts High School. Like he's the one who really like showed me like what it takes to be a part of a production team and work behind the scenes. And he's an NYU graduate, and I was really like in awe of the things that he's done in his career. And he shared a lot of information. Even to this day, like I'll text him like, hey, I have a question, or he's been a great mentor to me. So it was that moment, just sitting in a chair. I was like the technical director at the time, and switching between the cameras and stuff. And I loved it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
See, I think that that's such a golden nugget, because I'm sure that there's somebody that's watching this video and they may be thinking, maybe I'm a fine artist, but maybe I want to go into acting, or maybe I'm a photographer, but I want to start doing videography. And, it's about having a vision and being vulnerable enough to kind of put yourself in uncomfortable situations like you did, to then discover a whole new area of excitement for you, an area where you have talent, and an area where you can grow. But what I also heard you talking about is, you mentioned a teacher that kind of exposed you, and that's someone that you still stay in contact with. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, teachers, they are also underpaid. Teachers they're really jewels, and they're much needed. I think that's why I stopped teaching, because I wasn't as passionate about it. And I'm like, I know what it takes to be a passionate teacher. I've had passionate teachers, and I kind of felt like I was doing the kids a disservice. So teachers like that, like, they belong in the school system. They really inspire and like can really shape and change people's lives. But that's really the point of education anyway. So, shout out to Smitty for doing what he was supposed to do and loving
But
it.
shout out to you too for staying in contact with Smitty, because he's part of your social network now. He's not just a mentor, he's part of your support system, right?
Yeah, it's when you find people like that and you connect with them, you really have to like lean into that. And I was always open to that, even as a young person. It's like, hey, I love this man. He's a great mentor. He's shown me so much. It's like, so he's still a really good friend of mine.
I'm a product of mentorship myself. If it weren't for folks that really poured into me over the years, I don't know what I would be doing right now. To be quite honest, I'd probably still be searching. But I want to talk now about.
Before you switch gears,
Okay.
and too, like, Kim is being like kind of coy right now, but you were like a mentor to me as well. Like when I first got started with TTYL, like I had no money. I came to you. I was like, I have this little bit of money. I'm trying to do this launch party. Could you please help me? And you took me under your wings. You was like, I got you. And then, I've reached out to you over the years too, like, Kim, oh my God, such happened. So shout out to you too.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. And, it's good to be a part of each other's success story, each other's journey, because you just never know what someone needs to hear, and you're always learning. So I pour into you, you teach me something. It's a reciprocal process, But I'm really curious about learning more about Newark Moonlight Cinema, right? And that's what you're working on now. Is that right?
Yes.
And so, what inspired you to come up with Newark Moonlight Cinema during the pandemic?
So as an entrepreneur, like, you definitely have to be on a swivel. Like at any point, you got to be willing to pivot. And the drive-in. So when I went to the first time I worked in France for the film festival, the second time was for the advertisement festival. But I worked for a distributor, and I was talking to him about wanting to like start a distribution company that like highlights Black films. And he was like, well, if you really want to support Black films, then you need to open up a movie theater. That's how you support them in the real way. You open up a movie theater, you show their content. So this was in 2016. And so when I came back home, I like started doing a lot of research about like how to open up a movie theater. I went to the Bowtie Cinema in Montclair. I went and spoke to different general managers. So I had been putting in some work and trying to like see like how it's possible for me to open up a independent movie theater. And the brick and mortar theaters are really expensive. It's really expensive to open up a movie theater. So when the pandemic hit, I had just completed the documentary. I thought I was like going to be traveling to different film festivals, but the world shut down. And then there was one festival called the Lighthouse International Film Festival in South Jersey, and they did the pop-up drive-in movie theater concept. So they had the blow-up screens and they were showing people's films. And I was like, wait, this looks really easy. It was like a lot with a screen and a truck. I'm like, I think I can do this. So I came to my husband. I was like, hey, I think I want to open up a pop-up drive-in movie theater. He suggested the Bear Stadium. I'm like, yes, that's perfect. And we had a relationship with the owner, Ben Corman of Lotus Equity Group. Well, he was the owner at the time. And things just kind of just happened from there. Maybe from the time I mentioned it, maybe 45 days later, we were open.
What? In 45 days, you went from concept to a live drive-in theater.
Yeah, that was insane.
It had to be insane. So who was your team to make that happen?
My team is me and my husband. We are the team. I mean, outside of like we have like architects. So the good thing is like my husband's a developer. So he has architects, he has engineers, he has construction people he works with. So he, that part was like, that's already established. But really it's just me and him. And then no, it's more people. Like my nieces, like I try to keep them like they're like my daughters. I try to really keep them close to me. Every venture I go into, I bring them on. And one of my nieces had worked at an AMC. Her significant other also worked at an AMC. So I kind of tapped into them and just finding people around me that has some type of knowledge, like what it takes to run a movie theater. My sister-in-law, my husband's younger sister, tapped into her. And then, they're young people. And I'm just like, hey, do this research, look this up for me. And so between the 5 of us, yeah, we really got it going in 45 days. But my husband's construction team, they were stellar. And then because it's the pandemic, a lot of things were closed. So people are like, hey, you about to open up a drive-in movie? How can I help you? So the community really banded together. And if there are things that probably would have been a roadblock, they kind of just moved them out the way from it. Like, hey, well, there ain't nothing else going on in the city. So let's get this through so that we can get it open.
But I need to break that down a little bit more because one does not go from 0 to 100 in 45 days unless there was some preparations, even if you didn't know it was preparation. Like you talked about doing this research about a brick and mortar. Okay, it wasn't a brick and mortar, but you had done all of that preparation. So when the opportunity came, you were ready to kind of pivot and adapt. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So when you have an idea, it's if you don't write anything down, if you don't put pen to paper, if you don't do the research, if you don't go talk to people who work in that industry, then you will be completely lost. And doing that in 2016, 2017 definitely helped me for 2019, 2020. I never know what day or year it is. It's terrible. In 2020 when the pandemic hit, because I had, like I said, I went and I spoke to several different general managers from different movie theaters. And there are some general managers like I've had great relationship with over the years and just doing screenings and stuff in the city. So yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so just in doing that research and kind of figuring out like what's the path to be a movie theater owner when it was time for the drive-in to happen, it kind of like I just picked up, I just pivoted from an original idea and made some adjustments and then executed. And then because I worked in the festival at France, I reached out to the person who gave me the idea about opening up the independent theater, another distributor that I worked with at the time at Cannes Festival. I reached out to him as well. And I'm like, do you know people? So they also knew exhibitors too, because they're distributors. So they put me in contact with them like, hey, this person. And then one of my mentors from the Cannes Festival, he actually knew a former drive-in movie theater owner. So he connected me with him, and the guy gave me a lot of good advice on what it takes to get the drive-in open. So the concepts are, it's a theater, so they're very similar. It's just, the space is different, and the drive-in theater is actually a lot easier to open because it doesn't take as much construction time and build out as a brick and mortar theater does.
Incredible. I mean, you just talked about exercising, leveraging your international contacts, right? And your international experience. All of that kind of, as you said, tumbleweed kind of just built up to put you in a really great position to be the one, you and your husband, to be this team to do Newark's or what is it? New Jersey's first Black,
The countries.
the country's first Black drive-in movie theater. But there had to be preparation, again, maybe not conscious preparation, but subconscious preparation that was financial, because what you just described just sounds like it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it costs some money. But through the real estate, like I said, my husband has been doing very well with his real estate investments. So we had some money. And then, when there's the pandemic, there were a lot of grant opportunities for businesses that I was able to take advantage of. So all of those things and that's like you said, being prepared and just following what's going on in the market. I think really, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to find money. Like, that's kind of part of your full-time job is figuring out how to fund things. So when the pandemic hit, like that was like the time when there was so much money being given out, and then money given out at really cheap rates. And that's kind of something I know from real estate. Like people think when the market is down, like the market is depressed, that you should put your pocketbook away. No, that is the time to execute. That is the time to buy, because lending was at an all-time low. I think interest rates were like 2 and 3%, something that we've never seen in like a really long time. So, when the market is down, that's when it's time to like start that business, because real estate is going to be cheap. Lending money or money is cheap, to get loans and stuff. Sometimes the restrictions are a little bit more tough, but with the pandemic, they also eased a lot of the lending restrictions because they were encouraging people to take out the loans and to, and then use the money to like really help boost up the economy. So between that and grants and, the real estate, we were able to execute it. And we had already been doing that early in the pandemic. So then when it, like pandemic hit January, we opened up the drive in July. So I was like, hey, I got this money, so we got to do something with it.
Well, but it also sounds again like you were prepared for an opportunity, and to be prepared for this kind of opportunity and the kind of financial demands of an opportunity such as the one you successfully undertook. What part did having good credit, being kind of financially aware, what part did that play in you being able to execute, like get these grants, qualify for these loans, and just be prepared for what the financial, situation was going to be?
The knowledge plays a huge part. I've been a part of a lot of programs for entrepreneurs in the city, first time business owners that really teach you about how to like apply for grants, writing for grants, how to do a business plan. So in that, everything is like a building block. You go to this one opportunity, you get here, then you take another opportunity, and then you here, and then eventually they all kind of come together into one mosh pit for a bigger opportunity for yourself. So being part of like those entrepreneurial programs in the city, like the Hub and, and Eiffel, and being a part of those programs, they really taught me like how to focus on the business of being an artist, because artists are very creative people. We're aloof, we care about being artsy fartsy, as I say, and, really leaning into the passionate side of it. But as an artist, you're also a business. So you have to know how to run your business. You have to know how to do a spreadsheet, how to create a budget. And production also taught me that as well. Like if you're going to shoot a film or run a TV show, you have to have a budget. And, I think on the documentary, we probably spent like $400,000 on a documentary. So I was in charge of like budgeting and all those things. So that definitely prepared me, because the part of it being a business owner is you got to be able to make money to continue to be an entrepreneur. So when you have the money, you also got to know how to manage the money, because sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. And I'll be honest, like my credit wasn't that great, but like I said, because of the situation, the pandemic, and the things that were going on, they lifted a lot of the restrictions. Like, okay, your credit score could be a little bit lower, or only if you showed that you had some history in your business. And so if you're out here and you're saying you're a business owner and you don't have an LLC, you're doing yourself a disservice. So you should be doing that. You should be filing your taxes under your LLC, and, and showing that you're really investing in your business, even if you're not making a lot of money. Just just having a record of it with the government is what will allow you and give you the opportunity to take advantage of the grants, like the PPP loans and stuff like that.
That's such an important point, because, I've heard so many times that entrepreneurs aren't ready for a loan because they don't have the tax statements, they don't have the profit and loss statement, they don't have, it's so many things we don't have.
Right.
But it sounds like because you did have those things, you were able to get in the door for opportunities. So it just sounds like it was very important for you to navigate through the pandemic, but it was really those decisions you had made early on and kind of habits that you formed as an entrepreneur early on that paid off when it really came down to it.
Absolutely. And I advise, if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter if your business makes $500 a year or $500 million a year, you should have an accountant, like, filing your taxes for you. Your accountant is the one who will give you that. Don't go to H&R Block. Everybody has a struggle. You do what you can, but if you don't have to, and sometimes, honestly, accountants don't charge that much to do your taxes. I think my accountant charged me like $250 like back in the day, which is a lot cheaper than what H&R Block takes from your tax return. And I know that because I used to do that. I was like, wait, you want to take how much money? So when I switched to the accountant, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And they're the ones who will really give you the advice and let you know, like, okay, so this is the lending environment right now. This is a good time for you to like do that investment, or your accountants are really become a part of your team and they're your advisors, and they make sure they file your taxes properly so that you are recording your business to the state and to the federal government. So yeah, sure.
So now we're getting down to that team again.
Right.
So we have your therapist,
Right. Yeah,
your husband, your nieces, your accountant, and who else is a part of your team, your success team?
My mom, my kids, especially my oldest son. My youngest son is only he'll be 5 in a few days, but my oldest son, I run a lot of ideas by him. When the drive-in was open, he worked in the concession, and oh my God, we worked at night because it's a drive-in, and when it's like 11 o'clock, I'm like, okay, you have to go home, and he's like in tears, like, no, mom, I don't want to leave, I want to work. And sometimes we'll let him hang out. At the time, he was like 9 years old, but he's also a part of the team. And I've had different employees work for me. My employees from the drive-in, they are definitely a part of my team. We used to meet really often. We're not open right now, but we met at least once a month. And, I wanted to make sure I kind of instilled in them the work ethic. A lot of them were like college kids who couldn't go back to school because of the pandemic, or people who was furloughed from the movie theater. So, those people are definitely a part of my team. And I linked into them a lot to like learn about the business of being an exhibitor as the business was growing.
So how did you find all of these people in 45 days? Let's go back to that. How did you find them, and how did you, in such a short period of time, evolve as a leader to manage such an operation?
The leader part was tough, and that is real. I'm glad you asked me that question because I was used to being more like a one-man band. I'm a sole proprietor in my LLC. And, when I worked in film, a lot of those people were freelance. So you work with them for a little bit and then y'all leave. So, and they're, freelancers are more like independent workers. So when you have a staff, right, that's a lot different because they lean on you to know things. They lean on you to provide the structure for the business. They lean on you to provide all the tools necessary they need for them to function in their position. So, I would say my teaching experience is what allowed me to be a leader. Because when you're a teacher, and I mean, at Shabazz, I probably saw 100 kids a day, and teenagers are rough. So if you can manage teenagers, I think you guys can survive anywhere. And then in finding a staff, just using the normal online platforms like Indeed. And, again, it's a pandemic, so there's not a lot of work. So people are like very hungry for jobs at the time, and then having, my nieces who worked in the one niece, she worked in the movie theater industry. My other niece was a security guard, like certified SORA. So that niece, she really leaned into her network, and then she got us the security for the space. And then my other niece got us the staff for the concessions. And then my sister-in-law, she really helps me out like on the back end because she's like, that was like my assistant for a long time. So the family, I think because I was a teacher, you see the ambition, you see the spark in the young people's eyes, and sometimes they just need to be put in a position to do things and execute them, and and giving them responsibility. And I gave them that, and they handled it really well. They were a stellar team.
Okay, well, I was a frequent, I had my tickets often, to the drive-in movie theater. And, from where I sat, it was an amazing success. It was just wonderful. And it was so needed. Oh my goodness, so needed. It was a respite for me and my family to go there on Friday nights and have a good time and what have you. And so I would call it a success. Any way you look at it, I would call it a success. But I wonder from your perspective, what were some of the major challenges that we in our cars had nothing, we had no idea what was going on, but what challenges did you overcome in the early stages of launching that?
There were definitely a lot of challenges. The things about the when I tell people we open it in 45 days, it sounds really glamorous, but then there's clearly like, okay, there's something that we missed. And because we did it in 45 days, a lot of the pieces of the business were outsourced. So initially we had the blow up screen, but then the blow up screen had a lot of limitations where it couldn't like operate if it was too windy, if it was raining. So then we had to cancel some screenings, and people were really upset. They're like, hey, we waiting to come to the joint. Ain't nothing else to do. And you talking about you closed because it's a little bit of rain. They could not understand that. And then in the midst of the season, like we got a phone call from Amazon, like, hey, we're doing this activation where we're buying out drive-ins across the country. We want you to be a part of it. But our screenings are rain or shine. And I'm like, wait, so I have this blow up screen, it can't operate in the rain, but Amazon wants to give me all this money, and what am I gonna do? Um, but initially, and wanting to start the drive-in, my husband, who's building the first ever multifamily house out of shipping containers here in the state, I had told him like, there's a drive-in movie theater in Florida that has screens built out of shipping containers. I'm like, it looks easy to do. You can do it. My husband, like, you just gotta gaslight him. He just
started
right to get him started. He just needs the battery and he'll do it. But then at first he was dealing with the site. He like, I can't do that right now. I have to focus on the site. We'll just do the blow up screen. So then when Amazon called, I'm like, look, sir, I need a screen. I think it was like Wednesday, and then we had a screen by Monday.
What?
I know we're insane. We're
Are both
crazy.
of you like superheroes that I don't know about?
I don't know. We're insane. We're insane. I don't know. Like, even when I say it, I'm like, what? Like, who does that?
Who does that indeed?
Right. But again, because of his experience in working with shipping containers with the home, and, going through the rigmarole and dealing with the state to get it approved, because that was a really long process, so he's like the shipping container modification like guru at this point. So in doing that, and honestly, it was pretty simple. It's just like stacking them on top of each other and throwing some wood on it. I mean, it was a little bit more involved than that, but when you break it down, like that's really what it was. So that was one obstacle we had to overcome. But then because of the pandemic, like that was a good year for us. I'm not even gonna lie. It did really well. So we had the capital to invest back into the business and to do the screen out of shipping containers. And then like the food, the concessions, we was working with we were hired, like did a grill for hire. And then I think it got a little too overwhelmed from them. They was like, look, sis, this weekend is gonna be my last weekend. And I'm like, what? I got like 1,000 people showing up next week and they're going to be looking for food. And then from all of my research and understanding about the theater industry, is that concession sales is what supports movie theaters. So when you go to the theater and you're like, why does my popcorn $7 and it's such a small bag? That is because, and this is a little tidbit about being an exhibitor, the ticket prices you split with the studios. So when we charge you $13 for a ticket, we might only make $5 off every ticket because the rest of the money goes to the studio. So that's why the concessions is so inflated, because it has to make up for that loss. So with no concessions, you cannot operate. You will not be able to cover the cost of your business. So when he said he was going to leave, I'm like, what do you mean? But in that, I'm like, hey, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you got to be a problem solver. You just gotta, and you got to pivot. You got your head always got to be on the swivel. So we got a food truck, and we were able to run a food truck, and then that's how we started to do our concession sales. So there were obstacles. There were definitely obstacles. And then the first day was a mess because we had no idea how to like run concessions. Like I never worked in a restaurant before. That is not an experience that I had. No experience in that. So I'm like, it was pure chaos. But then my husband, like he came home, he probably was up to like 4 o'clock in the morning, like working on the system. And then the next day we had a meeting with the staff, and then like they gave us their input because again, a lot of them had worked in movie theaters. So like, okay, so this is how it needs to go. You need to go from here to there to there to there. And we had a whole system of how who gives the food to who passes the food, who talks to the customer, who takes the sales, you know. And then in that, over the weeks, it started to be more organized. And I would say that in reading, like, because I used to go online and read the reviews, that's important. A lot of people say like it's so organized, it's so well run, and that was the feedback that we wanted. That it was organized, that you came and like people was like it was 1,000 cars in that lot, and I was scared about how we always gonna get out, but it went so smooth. So when I saw that feedback, I'm like, yes, like okay, we're growing, we're improving. And then some things are like, oh, I had to wait a long time for my food, so now I go to my staff like, hey, we got this review. They said they had to wait a long time, so how can we improve for the next time?
Wow, I think that's fascinating because there were so many systems that you had to invent.
Right.
Besides standing up the whole operation, there were all of these smaller systems that you had to create. And to me, that's all business planning, you know, and your ability to pivot, especially when it came to a revenue source, a major revenue source for your business and your venture. I think it's really incredible. I just want to applaud you again
Thank you.
for the work that you've done and successfully have done and created a new standard, to be quite honest, for production, for impact, and really for innovation. Absolutely.
Thank you.
But okay, so you've done all of these amazing things. You've had your ups, you've had your downs. What would you say that you've just enjoyed the most out of this business that you started?
Working with my family. I think that is like the most important to me when you talk, you know, there's a lot of talk about building generational wealth, about providing opportunities for your community, and just to be able to, you know, take my people from my family, people who I love and I adore, and just to be able to work with them and put them in position and to be able to give them a check every 2 weeks. Like, you know, I'm auntie, but I'm like I got good, cool auntie points now because I kept them paid during that pandemic. So that's really important to me, to be able to work with my family, to inspire, to encourage them to pursue their own dreams, to work with them and all work together to build something. You know, I was just talking to my sister-in-law the other day who's like want to be in theater and she wants to act, and I'm telling her like, you were a part of something that was super successful. You have all the knowledge. I taught you so many things. You know, use your tools in your toolbox and brag about it. Like, don't be afraid to, you know, big up what you've done, you know, because I mean, I know it feels like, oh, it's just a family business. It's my brother and my sister-in-law, but you know, you did something major. So, you know, that's important to me, to put them in position so that they can also go out and do bigger things as well.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. Your sister-in-law probably hasn't yet discovered what all her qualities are, you know, and to trust what those qualities are. And I think that's true for a lot of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. They feel like, okay, maybe I'm good at something, but am I great? You know, and you may not be great in the beginning, but good is a great place to start.
I mean, what is greatness? Like, I think that's so overrated. It's like, just go and do it. Like, so many people out here faking it till they make it. It's terrible. You know, you walk into a room, you think people are so smart, and they're not that smart. Like Michelle Obama said, like, they're not as smart as you think they are. And you got to figure it out. I think a lot of people do get in their own head and get in their own way because they think they're not prepared enough. They think they're not smart enough. They think they're not something enough. And it's like, nobody is enough. Like, you know, that's the beauty of life. We're always evolving. We're always changing. You know, we're always growing. Nothing is never the same. So you might have been smart in 2010. You might not be that smart now, but that's okay. You know, you just keep going. You figure it out. You know, we're the generation, I'm a millennial, we're the generation now, we're kind of leading the wave. And then it's another generation going to come and they're going to be the cool kids, they're going to be the smart kids. And that's okay. You just got to just stay in your lane. Don't compare yourself to other people. Just find yourself and just do it. And if you mess up, I mean, you're going to mess up. That's the thing. That's the funny thing. Like, you think people who are successful, like, they haven't failed. They probably failed the most. They just didn't allow the failure to stop them.
Such important advice. What are some of the qualities, though, that you would advise someone who's an aspiring entrepreneur? Like, you definitely need some of these habits, or you need to incorporate this into your personality, or you need to get out of your own way in a particular way. What would you say to someone who wants to get into entrepreneurship?
My first advice would be, don't be the entrepreneur who wants to own 100% of nothing. I see that a lot of like new entrepreneurs, like they're really holding on to ownership and they don't want to do certain partnerships because that means they have to give a percentage of their business, and don't give away your entire business. But it's better to own 50% of $1 million than 100% of $100. Like, so be willing to partner with people, be willing to, take some risk, because that's just a part of being an entrepreneur. It's not really a safe route, and it's never a straight path. It's definitely like ping ponging. And then my second advice would be just to have the self-awareness, go to therapy. That's my therapy spill. Definitely go to therapy. And then just be willing to pivot, because entrepreneurship is definitely about pivot. When you see businesses that like fail or they like die out, like it's like the blockbuster effects. I think recently they shared a tweet where they had made like took a jab at Netflix, and he was like, well, this tweet, or maybe it wasn't a tweet because it was Blockbuster, but something on social media, they wrote something and they made a comment about them, and then it was like, well, this didn't age well, because Blockbuster, they were very big headed at the time, and they didn't see that, like I said, things are always evolving, things are always changing. Like, you have to be willing to move with the trends. You have to be somebody who follows trends. When I see people who like want to be like entrepreneurs, or they want to work in PR, and they're not on social media, they don't pay attention to celebrities. It's like, how? Like, those people are kind of like their guide for you to figure out what's trendy, to figure out what the masses want to lean into, or what's popular at the time. And you have to follow trends so that you can evolve as the world evolves and change.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of your daily habits? You speak of, being on social media. I'm sure you're somebody that does that every day, right? But what other daily habits do you have as an entrepreneur?
I'm probably not the best at this, because sometimes my habits suck. I'm not gonna lie, that's my weakness. Oh, and one advice I would give: know your weaknesses and be aware of them, and then find people to work in that position. That would
Yes,
be my
amen.
advice. I wanted to say that. I don't know. I wake up, I get my kids ready for school, I clean my house, and then I go to the office, and then I sit down, and I might do a little meditation before I start, some deep breathing, because it helps. Being an entrepreneur is stressful. But for me, like, so I like kind of like my mind works in like projects, because I'm usually having multiple things happening at the same time. So if I have like 4 or 5 projects happening at the same time, it's like, okay, I have to like have a task list. Google Drive is your friend. If you're an entrepreneur, you definitely should be using Google Drive, because it's free. You can do Excel, well, not Excel because that's Microsoft, but you can do Google Sheets, you can do Google Publisher or Google Slides, and you can do Google Drive, and you can do Google Docs, like, and then you can have it in your cell phone. Like, I have my Google Drive connected to my cell phone, so anytime I need to send like documents or emails or something, like, it's already in my Google Drive, I just attach it and send it. So that's definitely a part of one of my daily habits. I check my emails every day. I usually do that while I'm in bed, and I'll respond to emails. Then by the time I get to the office and I'm in my Google Drive, I'm creating my task list, okay? And then I'm going through my task list. I'm working with my assistant, okay, you do this, I do this, I do that. And, I try to like organize things, because sometimes like you have to write things down, because if you're, juggling multiple things, when it's all in your head, it feels like a lot. It's very overwhelming. But when you write it down and you kind of make it bullet points, and then as you hit your bullet points, like I'd be so proud of myself when I get to the end of my to-do list. I'm like, yes, I did that. And, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. So yeah, write things down. Try to be as organized as possible. I don't really like to tell people like to follow a certain system, because I think you have to work to your strengths, like what works for you. You have to find your routine, because a routine is not like a one size fits all. Everybody has a different life. Everybody has a different schedule. Like, you know, I would love to be the entrepreneur that can get in the office at like 9 a.m. every day. But by the time get my kids ready for school, I'm like, okay, got to clean up the mess, because, I'm also a mom too, and I want to have a clean house. So, I like to, I have to balance multiple things at the same time. So I'm usually in the office by like 10:30.
That's liberating. You don't have to be in the office at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. 10 a.m. is a wonderful time.
I do work late though. That's probably a part of it too. So I work on the flip side. I'm also a night person, so that works. I'm not really a morning person. So I'm like, get up at 6 a.m. Never. Well, not to be at work, but to get my kids ready for school. But yeah, so I'm working from like 10:30, and then after the kids go to bed, I might, watch TV and like work on some stuff on the computer. So yeah.
How do you keep that balance? I'm just looking at you and you look so fabulous and so calm, and you're managing all these projects and multiple businesses. Okay, therapy, but what else? What is the secret?
My husband is a really good support system. We work together, like we're partners in every sense of the word. Like real estate is his thing, but I'm still his real estate partner. Film is my thing, but he's still my film partner. Newark Moonlight Cinema, we brought our two strengths together, our two respective businesses. And then, because the driving was a real estate deal and it was a film business. So, we really work together a lot. Me and my husband also go to couples therapy. And we try to find that balance. It's a lot though. Like, I mean, the makeup makes you look good. So you get to hide all the bags and stuff, but it's tiring, at times, but it's rewarding. I think what really keeps me going is that I'm doing what I want to do, because I've worked for people for a long time. Like I said, I was a really bad employee. And I'm like, I know I suck. I probably shouldn't be doing this. And then being able to really do what I want to do and kind of, create my own path, it's rewarding. If I want to, like today, I woke up, I had a stiff neck. I'm like, I'm going to go to office at 12. I'm going to go get a massage. Like, that's great. Like I can just make that decision on the fly for myself. So that's good. That's the rewarding part of it. But it is, it's tiring, and, you have to keep pushing. But if you're doing what you love, it doesn't really feel like a burden. It's more like, okay, I'm just navigating life the way I created it. I mean, and what isn't stressful? So it's like, at least I get to pick my stress.
But okay, knowing what you know now, right? Hindsight is 2020, as they say. What would you have done differently in the beginning?
I would have started a lot earlier. I think that's the only thing I would have done differently. I would have started a lot.
Get out of your head sooner?
Yeah, get out of my head sooner. I was just having this conversation recently too. Like I said, I was always self-aware. I knew what I wanted to do, but like in college, I mean, it was great though. I partied a lot, like a lot. And I really didn't take the career path thing serious. Like, I wasn't networking how I probably should have, and like really showing up for like film events and trying to find my film village at the time. And I think my career kind of did suffer from that. I will admit that. And I think that's why it kind of forced me to work independently and not really like, I'm like not really in the industry. I'm still kind of circulating around it. But I do have a lot of industry contacts who do support me and help me. But, I don't really have, like when I look at like Issa Rae's career, because she's my idol, and Issa Rae, one day we're going to work together. I keep putting that in the universe because yes, sis. And I also follow people's careers. That's another part of my research. So when I like look at Issa Rae's career, and she's like in film school, and she started Awkward Black Girl, and she did the YouTube show, and then she really like linked it to that network and see how her career propelled. And then I waited till I was like 26 years old to do it. And it's funny, at the time she was doing Awkward Black Girl, I was doing TTYL. It's just that her show it was bomb. So it took off. And mine kind of like, at some point kind of just spaced out because I didn't, just whatever, because things happen. So when I look at people's careers like that, I'm like, well, if I would have started, I had the drive, I had the mentality, but I wanted to party instead. So, find a balance of partying and then also taking your career journey serious while you're in school. So I think that's what I would definitely would have started at like 20 or independently. Because I was always like, oh, you have to have an internship, you have to have a job. Like that was the way I thought at the time, even though I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I'm like, how do I do that as a filmmaker and not really having the courage to just like, hey, just go and do it?
Do you have any closing bits of advice or remarks that you'd like to leave with an aspiring entrepreneur that is definitely out here in Newark that's looking to get into this industry, or maybe fighting some of their own, demons, so to speak?
I would say the only difference between you and I is action. So, I'm just a girl from Newark, New Jersey, who grew up in a one-parent household, who mom struggled, and, we had to find a way and we figured it out. But, I had a vision and I executed it. So, it ain't too much no difference between the two of us. So if you have an idea, if you have a passion you want to pursue, you just have to do it, like Nike. Just do it.
Awesome. So how can someone stay in touch with you so that they can stay inspired by your story?
Thank you for that. The Instagram plug. Follow me on Instagram at Hollywood Rebel _ and for the drive-in, it's at Newark Moonlight.
Thank you so much, Ayanna, for this conversation. I've learned so much about you. I had no idea 45 days, that's a t-shirt right there.
You're right, I'm gonna brand it.
This has been a great conversation, and I really, really hope that it lands on somebody's ears that needed to hear this story about an amazing Black woman from Newark, New Jersey, who has made history in this nation by opening the very first drive-in movie theater in the city of Newark. Thank you again for your time and for your willingness to give back to the community, as you always do.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you, the Newark Public Library. Thank you, Kim. It's an honor.
And thanks again to the Newark Public Library and to Ann Schatz and to the entire team here for their visionary leadership to create a space for creative entrepreneurs. This is the place where you can learn how to make your dreams come true. This is Creative Gains, the first in a series of conversations with entrepreneurs that are creatives, that are thriving, and that are going to tell you their story so that you can do the same thing. I'm going to turn it back over to Newark Public Library.
Thank you so much, Kimberly and Ayanna. That was such an inspiring conversation. It was so great to learn about you, Ayanna, and I think our entrepreneurs are going to benefit a lot from, it can seem really mystifying, like, how do I even get started? How do I do this? And just hearing the story, your story, I think people will really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And I want to thank, I just want to mention that this has been recorded and it will be available for review next week. On behalf of our director, Jocelyn Bowling Dixon, and the Board of Trustees, President Dr. Lauren Wells, we thank you for joining us this evening, and many thanks to the PNC Foundation for sponsoring this event. Thank you.